First of all, I saw this on Twitter and it was posted by Spoofy. Every single one of these is the exact same FC name. There is no difference to them outside of probably the actual FC name. This is, sorry, I should say FC tag, not FC name. I apologize. This has been a thing for a while. I know it's a rehashed topic that has came up a few times in stream. However, I want to talk about it in detail because I feel like I've done enough investigation into it at this point. Also want to say that I am not saying this is against the rules and by any means. They are technically doing everything within the rules. Everything that is a problem right now is this a morality statement by people who have a problem with it. I personally am not going to shun them, but I do want to talk about it, how it affects the game. It is ultimately SC's decision what should and should not be allowed, and my justification of why it shouldn't be allowed will come up in a minute. I'm not going to sit here and grandstand, though, besides just bringing up what the problems are with it and what it's doing. I don't have a problem with this particular group. It's more of, it's just a very obvious ward in the game that has this happening. And that's why I want to talk about it. It is easy to identify that this is what's going on here. First of all, context of why I understand the matter. I am using submarines. They are the reason why people do this. And you make a lot of money making submarines. I do own multiple houses, most of which were grandfathered in. Two of them were originally from back in 2.0 when there were no such thing as a personal house, and FCs were completely barren. They did not exist. The other houses that I have managed, I am just managing them. I do not actually own them. And I get the advantage of using their submarines. So this is why I know the context of this. So if someone wants to say, oh, you have no room to speak because you're doing it, fine, so be it. I don't care. I'm going to talk about it anyways because I still think it's a problem. And I have no problem with if SC changes this and changes the rules on this so you cannot do this. I would be happily able to limit down to what the actual rules are, which I will go over in a minute. What it appears to be the rules are, because there are actual rules that I keep forgetting are laminated on their own site, but are not enforced in any way, shape, or form. The whole entire reason this happens is there are submarines. They basically give you, in the best or average scenario that has been calculated by submarine experts, let's just say, about 205 million gil a year. If you are on top of it, the best case scenario, you have the best setup. You have all of your parts you have all your FC ships at level 200, or sorry, at level 115. All four submarines, they have the proper parts. It will bring back on average that much a year. It is also very passive once you have it set up. It takes an incredibly amount of time to set this up in the grand scheme of things, because it is about 6 months of setting the whole ship up, getting the parts. If you are not a person with money in the first place, it will be difficult to even set the ship up by yourself if you were to do this. I don't have an exact gil amount to give you because it depends on server to server and what the market is at the moment. But I would estimate if you were to do this by yourself to set this up, you would probably be spending somewhere between probably 10 to 15 mil just buying the parts for all your airships, or sorry, all your submarines. I'm gonna mix up airships and submarines all the time. I apologize, because the system originally was airships. You're probably gonna spend somewhere between 10 to 50 mil is what I would estimate. If you buy the materials themselves, it probably could be cut down lower, but the actual parts off the market board straight buying them, they'll probably cost around that for all of your airships, or sorry, submarines. You could probably get this down to, if you gathered and slash market boarded, you probably could get it down to like maybe at best like spending 1 million gil, but it would require a lot of time. There's also a component of it that you have to have the recipe unlocked from your free company in order to do this in the first place, because that requires pulling back materials. That's a major part of the setup. So you are to the advantage of, if you have money, you will make money in this situation, because you then don't have to buy the recipe, or sorry, you don't have to unlock the recipe. You don't have to get other people to help you. You don't have to go gather the mats. If you could just had money in the first place and you could buy them, you're at an extreme advantage here. It makes the whole process a lot smoother. It is very tedious to set up. That's why I'm emphasizing this is incredibly tedious to set up. So the fact that someone set it up on all of these, it takes a lot of effort. The main issue is that once you are in this situation, once you have been through all of this, for all 660 of these, because there's 60 of them on this particular one, I'm guaranteed there's more out there elsewhere. I've heard of others. I've seen screenshots of others. That just let's look at this scenario. If you do this, you are looking at about 12 billion 300 gil potentially on average for a year, if you were to do this, if this person does this. That's a lot. This is a very like big incentive, and I know people will say, well, what's the point, right? What's the point? Why would you do this? What is the reason someone would even consider doing this? There are people who just want to accumulate gil, and they just want to hoard it, and that's a good enough reason. And the same thing goes with, they just want to own a whole ward and say it's theirs. That's a good enough a reason. There's also other reasons. You could arm-T it. I looked at how much this would turn into on average, and I estimated, based on current gil prices, it's about 15K per year in USD. Now, that's not a lot if you're a US citizen or a maybe European citizen in a first world country. Now, in a third world country, that might be worth a lot. And a lot of times the RMT stuff does revolve around third world countries. It depends on where you live. That might be worth quite a bit. So I don't know if it's RMT. At least if it's owned by someone who is within a first world country, I don't believe this is a lot for them. And I don't think they would be incentivized to do this, because it doesn't really make sense to me as far as like the amount of effort and work involved with doing this. My assessment of why you would potentially do this is you are probably just wanting to hoard, and that's it. I cannot like, or you live in a third world country, and that 15 mil is huge, or sorry, $15,000 is huge. It's really hard to like know. I don't know which one it is, but it's one of the two in my mind, because there's no ungodly reason that you'd ever need 12 billion gil a year outside of you want to hoard or you are participating in RMT like kind of situation. I don't know which of the two it is. It's hard to say, but that's my assessment. And I know people might be like, well, that's going to cost a lot of subs, right? Well, you need about eight service accounts to do this. Basically, what has to happen is you have to, on each of those service accounts, transfer FCs to characters on that service account. And it would take quite a bit of effort to do all of this, because there's also a factor of you have to wait 30 days to transfer the FC in the first place. If you transfer the FC, you can't, like I said, you have to wait 30 days, and then you can actually give it to the person you're wanting to give it to. So you have to have multiple accounts to even like balance this whole thing in the first place and make this happen, because there are rules. I would assume in order to accomplish getting this all in a first ward, they probably had maybe 60 service accounts somehow at one point. I don't know how else they would do this because of some rules. So how this works and how you're supposed to be able to maintain FCs and private plot, like as far as like a normal player goes. So you're not supposed to have more than one FC a house per server. So or world. And the same thing goes for a private plot. Even if they're on your service account. So if I have 8 characters, I should not be able to have more than one of those per account, like, or per like world. So not all my 8 characters cannot have a personal, it cannot have a world. And this is set up in the rules right here. You can see the requirements. It says it here. But because you can transfer FCs, they did not put a failsafe in this in the first place, so people are able to transfer them. And that's where the 30 days thing comes up that I talked about. There is nothing stopping that. And that's why I was like looking at this and I'm like, how did they do this? The only thing that can come to my mind is, I know Dynamis is dead, or like there's like what the new Shadow server that's dead. But you would imagine that there are other FCs involved with trying to get houses, and they would want them in the first ward. So to make that happen, even in the first place, they had to have a shit ton of accounts. I'm not sure how this was done, but it would require quite a large amount of effort in my mind. It's really hard for me to like figure this out any other way than they had a ton of service accounts. But the actual, like, once you have this set up, the amount of service accounts you need is 8 to maintain all this, as far as like how much subscription, which ends up coming out to like 1,000 something a year out of that 15,000, just to give you an idea if it was an RMT situation. Whoops, that's not the right one. The other thing I wanted to say, this would be an incredibly risky operation in my mind when it comes to FCs if an RMT were to do this. And it makes me think it's not an RMT for this reason, outside of someone just fanatically wanting to own all these houses and maintain them for some reason. If you were to have your RMT account deleted, it would waste so many months of effort and investment from the RMT account. It doesn't quite make sense to me. I've seen stuff on like World of Warcraft, like RMT situations, and people talking about this. And a lot of times they get their accounts deleted pretty quickly and they have to reset them up. And it takes effort to do that. Now, I understand this is Final Fantasy XIV and this is not WoW, and the enforcement's maybe different between the games. But to me, I think it's really weird to just assume that this is RMT, I guess, because, or this kind of like situation's purely RMT, because if you invest 6 months into setting this up, because it takes that long to like send the ships out, have them come back and do all the things that they need to do to make that possible, it just doesn't add up to me that it would be RMT because of the investment time. If they got nuked at any point in time, unless they're just really off the radar somehow to SC, which it feels very like blatant, like, and very visible when you do this, I can't assess this to RMT. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I've eliminated in my mind the RMT situation. I've like tried to like what could possibly make an RMT do this? It doesn't add up at all to me. Maybe there are RMT that do it very discreetly, but as far as like this specific one, it doesn't add up to me at all in any way, shape, or form. I cannot like assess this properly to RMT. The other thing I want to talk about is what is SC actually doing and what should they be doing? And I don't, technically this is not against the terms of service. And that's why I maintain, like, I don't think anyone should be punished in this situation. There's a morality issue, obviously, here. It's really rough to know if they should punish anyone for this because there are technically rules, but SC doesn't SE doesn't tend to like moderate the rules the same way as some other games do. And I want to use WoW as another example. WoW a lot of times will enforce the rules where if someone is doing something that appears to be against the intent of the developer and it is an exploit or it is something that is out of the ordinary that kind of like breaks the game and it doesn't seem like it's supposed to happen, WoW will punish them. SE doesn't do that, and I don't know if that's how they should enforce or shouldn't, because this is definitely a situation where like I feel like they are saying on their site this is what they want to do. They want one house per person for an FC and private plot. And in theory, I believe the rules are supposed to do this, even within the game. It's just there are loopholes, and I wonder if that loophole is something they've even recognized or they've even like they give a shit about. It's hard to say. So that's why I question if this is actually really against the rules in any way, shape, or form. I know people bring up like how it's disgusting and etc., but the reality is that it is technically within SE's rules. So it's really hard to like for me to be like there is something wrong here outside of morality. They should give a shit. Oh, I'm not saying SE shouldn't give a shit. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that. I've already said, as a participant in submarines, I completely understand why this should be handled. And I don't want to talk about from the guild standpoint, because I don't think anyone's going to like agree with me on the guild standpoint. I think this is fucking up the market personally. I'm not going to go into huge detail about that. But I think from the free company standpoint, I think it is a bad thing. I think it is a bad thing that it takes up housing from other people. And I do know that on some of these servers, there are blank free companies. There are blank personals. It's more of a perception thing when we already have a situation on many of the other servers where people are having struggles getting a house in the first place, that like when they see this is like wild. I want to be very clear. I do not believe this is against the rules technically, but there are some rules that are supposed to be maintained. It's just whether like SE relates them to punishment. It's more of like, I think this is the intent by SE, and they're technically breaking the intent, but it's not like a TOS binding thing. There is nothing in the TOS that like holds these rules to be true. So for some context, I am going to show, besides just me telling you the averages, this is what you make. This is mine. And this comes back every 1 day, 1 day and a half. About. I don't want to give you the exact day. I don't have it off the top of my hand. I don't always get back to the exact point in time. But you can see that I am trading to an NPC. All these items. These are not sold on the market board. This is not exchanging of gil. This is pure gil being generated by the game. I do not have to do anything but sell it to an NPC. That's why this is so easy to generate the gil and why submarines are so lucrative. I'm not going to come at this from the angle whether submarines are balanced or not. I purely want to talk about it from the fact of it is incentivizing people to do this. Is this healthy or not? I don't believe it personally is. I don't personally think this is healthy economically, but I'm not going to sit here and die in a hole like on like an argument about this. I just want to show you this is what's possible. This is what's happening. But this is happening at this scale. The devs surely did not intend for this. I don't know. The thing is this is my like perception of it. I believe it's a unmaintained system outside of the fact of them just adding more to it, and they have completely forgot about the salvaged items. These salvaged items are what's causing this. It's nothing to do with like minions or anything like that. I do not think that you necessarily should punish people for doing this. It is completely a system within the game that allows you to do this. I don't think anyone is wrong for doing this. I think it's absolutely within the rules. It's something that is completely permitted. They design the system, they're allowing it, everything like that. But it causes problems is what I'm saying. Also, by the way, this is in no order. I'm just posting it so you can get an example. Those are all like, just to be clear, these are bad days in here and there's good days. But you can see most of the days, it's pretty damn good. If submarines are the issue, then wouldn't it make a good counter to make it somehow available independent of housing? I do believe that is a solution. And I maintain that that is a potential solution. I want to say that very clearly. They have not given any indication that they want to do this. They do not have any indication that it seems like it's a problem. It never comes up in any interview. It never comes up in anything like related. It feels like it's a non-issue to them because no one talks about it. Besides the non-instance housing, I personally believe this is a large issue with the current established housing situation. It's not like consistent across the board that this is happening. It's just more like, I can't tell if it's happening elsewhere besides wards like this, because for all we know, someone's obscuring it by changing the tag. Someone's changing the name. How do you know if someone's just creating random names for each of their FCs? You'd never know. But the fact that someone's able to even do this in the first place with a completely like consistent name, it's very out in the open and obvious. It feels more at the expense of other people's funds since housing is already limited. Yes, that's kind of why I'm like, I don't want to talk about it from the economic part. I understand how it functions. I understand what's going on. I don't want to sit here and say that this is going to somehow break the fucking economy. I think it's more important to identify that it is, I guess to me, causing people to not have houses. It doesn't need to be where SE all of a sudden just nukes all of housing or something. It just needs to be, they need to make it so the rules are consistent, because the rules on the site can't be maintained if they allow transferring houses under the search situation. Because it says right here, you do not have a character on the same world on the same service account that purchased and maintains a free company plot. It literally says this. So it is their like technical requirements, quote unquote. It's just not enforced. The system's supposed to maintain that, but it doesn't. I don't know what to say for people that are grandfathered in. And I'm not gonna like, I'm not gonna come in and say they should nuke this whole entire ward either. But I feel like going forward, if they add more housing plots, they add more wards, they add more anything. Because otherwise I feel like it's gonna keep repeating itself, especially like if they ever add more servers. I want to say this, I question adding more servers at this point, because I feel like we kind of hit peak at Endwalker, and maybe I'm wrong and Dawn Trail will bring Final Fantasy XIV to new heights in population and stuff. I hope so, but I don't think that's a obvious reality that's going to happen 100%. I absolutely agree that as long as 14 has no instance housing, there will always be some type of housing issue. There's no debate about that. I mean, that's came up so many times in my stream. Whenever we've talked about housing, I personally think they should add instance housing. They should at least make it so apartments can be upgraded to other sizes. And then there's also the fact of like any FC should have a way to access the company like storehouse or workshop. They should be able to access that like from the GC or something like that. Like there's tons of solutions. A great thing about Island Sanctuary was it uses the exact same instance system that housing does. And we know this because when people were entering Island Sanctuary too frequently and leaving in and out over and over again because like people were doing like, you know, the special mobs that were like appearing at specific times a day, and then there were people trying to get in their house at the same time, it both impacted each other. So clearly the Island Sanctuary is using the housing system at some degree, or at least their back end for it. Was it Island Sanctuary indirect attempt? They kept saying it was not housing over and over and over again, and then they eventually added that like outdoor furnishing thing. So we'll see what happens if anything comes of this. I doubt it will, but I still want to talk about it because I feel like it's completely relevant to the whole entire housing situation, and I still feel bad for people that aren't able to get houses. So